The true nature of human consciousness is a multidimensional consciousness. This means a multidimensional awareness, perception, and understanding of our reality. Now, the challenge that we find ourselves in is that most people don't have a reference of what the experience of multidimensionality feels like, and therefore we're all unable to really determine how blocked and how much we are restricting ourselves from having that multi-dimensional experience that is our true and innate nature. So what I'm going to do in this video is explain what the shift feels like moving from being blocked to accessing your multi-dimensionality, and how that changes the very way that you perceive and interact with physical reality. So the way I'm going to go about explaining this is by using a metaphor, using a reference that everyone will know about and understand to explain how this shift feels. So what I want you to imagine is, if you go back, say, 20 or 25 years ago, and we're going to be comparing the way that we have been experiencing options for coffee on a menu somewhere. So back in the past, 20 odd years ago, if you were to walk into a cafe, then the menu that you would see, the options that would be presented to you, would quite often just have literally one coffee option. The menu, might have a couple of other drinks, but coffee would just be one item. You can order your coffee and that's it. That was the normal expectation that people were used to and lived by in the past. Yet, what we have seen more recently over these last 10 years or so is this expansion of what the coffee options on the menu can actually be. There's so much more complexity, so much more detail, so much more nuance that is now available. So if you compare that in the past, just that one coffee option, to now going into a coffee shop in these modern times, and you can find a coffee menu that may be 10 different types of coffees: cappuccino, latte, mocha, etc., etc. And each of those drinks actually has, let's say, for example, 10 different variations that you can order of each of them, whether you want it to be hot or cold. You might want it to be decaf, you might want a shot of syrup or flavors. So there's been this real expansion of what coffee is on the menu, and the detail and the complexity of what we are able to perceive and understand, and our expectations have actually shifted rather radically. So now if you go into a coffee place with 10 different coffee options, and each of those drinks has 10 different variations, what you're actually now dealing with is 100 different drinks. There are 100 different options, 10 drinks times 10 variables, that you can actually come in and decide between, to say, okay, out of 100 different variations of the variables that are available, I want this exact drink. So you can see how the level of detail has expanded out massively. And there's the shift in consciousness to be able to understand and expect and hold that level of customization, where the person who walks into the coffee shop today with 100 different variables of drink available completely takes that in their stride. It doesn't even concern them. It doesn't bother them to think, oh, well, that's a lot of options, or how do I decide? Whereas the person from 20 years ago who only walked into the cafe and had the one coffee option that said coffee, okay, I'll have the coffee. You can imagine how if they were to jump into the future where there's suddenly 100 variations of coffee, that could be quite confusing or overwhelming if it was to happen immediately. So, this is a good example of how our level of consciousness has shifted, it has expanded. We've all shifted into this new normal where we can hold this larger data package of, okay, these are all the options, these are all the decisions that I need to make in order to determine, okay, this is the exact drink that I want. And this is very much an excellent description or metaphor of the shift in multidimensional consciousness that we are all actually going through. Things that previously were being experienced in a more simplistic way with little detail or little nuance are now being expanded out. The options are becoming much broader. The information that our consciousness can hold, the bandwidth that we have to be able to hold that information is expanding. And it's been quite a subtle and gradual and natural shift that you can see that the society and people have made over time. And so this is also what is happening across our experience of reality and our experience of ourself as our consciousness is going through this broadening of the breadth of data and information that we are able to hold and we are expecting and we are processing in any given moment as we interact with what is the same reality. An important thing to note here as well is that when the consciousness has expanded out, so when the person has got used to now being able to handle the 100 coffee options as being normal, what actually happens there is that that person is able to exist comfortably in anywhere of that spectrum. So the person who is used to the full menu can still go to find a cafe and be comfortable engaging in a cafe where you might still find somewhere you can walk in and find there is just one coffee option on the menu still. So the original context is still present. It does also still exist. It hasn't been completely eroded or it's not void. It does still exist. But actually, if you know where to go, then you can actually hold this greater level of consciousness where you can have the option to customize something so much more specifically tailored to your desires or your needs or your wants. So it actually creates this range, this spectrum that you can hold. And you can still go back to somewhere and have that previous original experience of just one on the menu. Yeah, okay, I'll go for the coffee. Or you can expand it all the way up to, okay, hit me with all the options. I'm going to work out exactly which variation out of the 100 options of this example that I would like. What do I fancy today? So this is the process of expanding into our multidimensional awareness of reality. It means that the way that we interact with physical reality, in terms of it being physical objects or people, experiences, emotions, memories, our thoughts or our projections about the future, all of those things are expanding out into new levels of detail, new levels of nuance, and new levels of mastery are opening up to us, new levels of opportunity to be able to understand the mechanisms by which these things are created, how they work, what they mean. And this is the process of really understanding how to master your reality as you expand into being able to hold broader bandwidths, bigger packages of data about your reality and your experience and who and what you really are. So, with that understanding, let's now think about how would that multidimensional shift change the way that you could experience or perceive something in reality. So let's use the example of a baby. If someone you know has had a baby that you're meeting for the first time, the traditional understanding of the baby is, of course, oh, this baby is a combination of the genetics, the DNA of both the mother and the father, and the baby is going to carry traits of them both. And, you know, the normal things that we would be asking about or thinking about is, you know, how is this baby sleeping? How is this baby eating? Etc., etc. So that is the traditional view of this new baby has entered into this world. So as you then shift your perception and your consciousness into a multidimensional awareness of that same experience, and you're accessing an understanding of reality from the higher dimensions, from a greater alignment with the divine mind. So the new kind of perception that you're going to be instead having is the fact that I'm aware that this new baby is a new soul that has just incarnated into this layer of reality. There's going to be things about this soul, for example, its soul purpose, its soul plan, things that it has contracted to do while it is here in this lifetime. Perhaps there's particular types of karma or energies, karmic loads, traumas from other lifetimes that this soul has come in carrying and is aiming to work through or transmute or release in this lifetime. There may be contracts or agreements that this soul is carrying that are relating to the parents and the role that this particular child is going to play in the development of the souls of the parents and also people around them in their lifetime. There's going to be also history of this soul. Who are the other lifetimes that this soul has been playing, or this oversoul group? There may even be family members in this same ancestral line, in their ancestral lineages, who have actually incarnated down into this lifetime. So you can see that there's like a lot more detailed, complex information about this child and this soul of who are you and what role have you come to play? What are the gifts, skills, and abilities that you have specifically come down from the infinite to come into physical reality, to come to share with humanity? Every soul comes in with something that they are offering, something that they are bringing that is perfectly suited to a need that already exists here. So there will be gifts, skills, and abilities that this particular soul is coming to fulfill as a role of service and love to the collective and to this shared co-creation of reality that we are in. Other things that you would know about this soul is that this soul is a multidimensional being. This soul also exists through other dimensions. This soul is a fractal. of the divine consciousness. This is the consciousness of Source God, having come down into physical reality to experience itself from another unique viewpoint with another unique set of variables. And in that understanding, you also know yourself to be a fractal with a unique viewpoint, with a unique set of variables of the divine mind, of divine consciousness. So in that moment, you also inherently know that we are both extensions of the same being. The baby is a part of me, and I am also a part of this baby. We are two extensions of the one divine mind, the infinite. And so what you're really seeing, what you're really like tapping into in that moment of seeing this baby, seeing this child, and all of this understanding is being held in that instant moment simultaneously. What that breaks you through into is the understanding and the knowing that the baby and everything in reality is really another mask that divine consciousness is wearing. It's another mask for infinity. If you zoom in all the way through to the consciousness of this baby, this child, it would expand out into many different timelines, many different life variations and paths that they can take. There will be different versions of their future selves. There will be different versions of them that exist on different parallel realities. And as you follow that path out of expanding further and further, you reach the point of infinity, which is the divine consciousness. And so everything in reality then becomes another role, another mask that divinity and infinity is playing. You can see the infinite divine in the child. You can see the infinite divine in yourself. You can see the infinite divine in the bowl of fruit, in the dog, in the sun. Everything is a window, a rabbit hole into seeing the divine consciousness, which is the infinite. We are all manifestations of that same one infinite loving consciousness field. So this is the breadth of understanding that multidimensional consciousness is holding. It literally expands all the way out to that singularity point, which is the black hole point of infinity. Every single thing in your reality extends out to that point of divinity. I've said before that I don't want to, break quantum physics, but the quantum measurement of time and space is infinity. Now, what does that mean? The quantum measurement is really saying, what is the smallest increment? What is the smallest measurement of something? And that's why quantum physics has been all about finding smaller and smaller particles, atoms, quarks, etc. So, to give a more real world example, it would be a bit like, let's say if I had a jar of coins and notes of British pounds money. If I was using this physical currency and I could say, okay, so what's the quantum measurement of this currency? That would be the 1p, the 1 penny. 1 pence is the smallest measurement of currency out of the physical cash that I could have in my jar. So, this is what I'm saying about our reality. From the multidimensional perspective, as you expand into your true nature, the quantum measurement of time and space is infinity. And that's how every moment of time, every portion of space is really just a finite experience of the infinite divinity that is inherent in all things, in all people, in all places, in all times. This is the shift that we are being invited to open up into as we move from just having the awareness of, oh, this is a baby, this is what a baby means. I've seen loads of babies before, not a big deal. You can shift all the way to your consciousness from the higher dimensional perspective and understand, wow, this baby has so much more complexity, so much more detail, so much more nuance that I can access and I can understand and I can perceive in an instant, simultaneously. That is how, in the same way that we've shifted from that coffee menu, having gone from being, okay, we just have coffee on the menu, that's the one option, I'll order the coffee, to then being a menu of 100 different variations of coffee. This is the shift that we are all making now in our consciousness, in our experience of ourselves, of our reality, and what it means to be human. We are learning to decipher and access the infinite nature of it all that was always inherently present. When you have that shift in your perception, it's not that the item itself has actually changed. The perception of the baby shifts, but it's not that the baby before didn't have all these layers of information or complexity. It was just that we weren't able to access what was always present, what was always there. It was always true. But our ability to hold that level of complexity, that bandwidth of data, was not available to us in that state of consciousness. So we're really tapping into our full potential as human beings as we unravel and discover who and what we truly are as fractals of divine consciousness, experiencing ourselves in physical form.